Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another interview. This is Sean Renzo Head, and I'm joined by a special guest and a good friend of mine, Kazuaki Uekawa. He goes by Kaz. Kaz, thank you so much for hanging out today.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So the reason why I wanted to interview you is because you do something really unique with your skills of in English, and that you've actually written a book called Eigo Nodo, The English Throat. And you do lots of work with how English sound works. And this is something I'm very interested in as a flute player because we are really, really in tune with what our throat and what our body is doing as we're playing. So, how did you discover? Well, first off, can you talk a little bit about Eigo Nodo and the book itself?
First of all, I have to confess that it's actually not my invention, but my wife figured it out, everything for me. So Eigo Nodo is about this approach of helping Japanese people how to speak better English. And Japanese people tend to speak like, Japanese people speak like this in the mouth, kind of resonating in the mouth. And the mouth is not a great studio. It's like bone and, lips. But if you think of this whole pipe as a studio, and then you can sound better and you can imitate any sounds. And English is just one of the systems of sounds. I can even imitate like or if used this.
Mm-hmm.
But Japanese speakers, especially standardized version, like the one from Tokyo, it's really like a crisp, and you have to make sure that we have small tsu, like a gakki. You really have to tighten your throat to really produce like authentic Japanese. That's why I think many Japanese people struggle, especially adults, to do this something simple that you guys take it for granted almost in the West.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because could you give us an example of what like a 外国人の accent would sound like?
外国人の人はこんな感じで喋りますね。
And then in the Japanese version?
外国人の人はこんな、日本人はこんな感じで。
So actually
Yeah.
completely different sound. And that is a very something I hear a lot of. And and I've always wondered why a lot of my Japanese friends struggled because with English pronunciation. And when I was in college, actually one of my part-time jobs was to teach English to the ESL students, which is English as a second language. And I always noticed that a lot of times the pitch would stay flat. So for example, they wouldn't say garage, they'd say garage, and it would be this very tight, very flat sound, which is normal in Japanese.
Even there, I want to point out, though, interesting, because you think it's flat, but Japanese people speak like really up and down, right?
Yeah, yeah.
今日はこんな感じ. But you guys are telling Japanese people, you guys sound flat. So there's some interesting contradiction. And I think we have found a way to solve this seemingly like a really difficult contradiction. You know what I mean? Like Japanese is such a up and down language. But the moment we start speaking English, Western people think like, you guys are speaking flat. And then that's not really great because we start exaggerating. If we speak English like this, thing sounds more natural because you are telling me to use more, right? But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
trick is this, especially standard Japanese, we are so flat within the syllable. Within, instead of saying what, we say what. But between syllables, we are so drastic, like wasabi,
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the puzzle that we feel like we have solved. And I think you can hear it when Japanese people play music too. When they probably play flute, they may play like dun, dun, like a flat within the note. Of course, there's a between notes. Of course, there's like a tonal change, pitch change, I should say. But within the note, I think many Japanese, even guitarists, play so flat because that's a reflection of how we speak.
It's very interesting. Actually, the way that I when I was teaching violin and viola more frequently, one of the things I talked with my advanced students is I would ask them, okay, you're playing this composer, where is this composer from? And then they say, oh, I don't know. It's like, okay, well, the composer is from Italy. They say, "Oh, okay, that's cool. Why are you telling me this?" Besides the fact that it's the like a regional thing, and but the reason why I told them was because I want my student to play with an Italian accent. I want them to play as if they're listening to an Italian person speak or sing, and that changes the characteristic of the piece. It's going to become a lot more lighter. The notes are going to be shorter, and it's going to be a little bit more um, energetic in terms of the speech. Now, if we're going to play French music, okay, well, it's completely different now. I want things to be very liquidy and connected, and but that's just how my ear as an English speaker is picking up those sounds. But that's how the music really does tend to reflect how those people speak.
Piano drives me nuts because I feel like this is just my opinion. Tell me if I'm wrong. Piano drives me nuts because when you hit a note, it just goes, and I'm like so annoyed. But
You know,
guitar, you can change the tone, and what do you
that's
think?
that's one of the things that composers say a lot, and even pianists, great piano players that are close friends of mine have lamented this same fact. um, like piano is a very difficult instrument to get lots of colors out of, because it's the tension between the lowest note and the highest note are the same, whereas on a guitar you can play the same note on six different ways, and actually more, because you can bend pitches and whatnot, and you can change the vibrato. There is no vibrato on piano, which takes a lot of that color away. um, but it does things that it really is a percussion instrument. It's not the same as a violin, where it has more expressivity. They get their colors in terms of dynamic changes, and also by how many notes they're playing, and they create tensions in different ways, which makes it a much more difficult instrument to uh, to send that sort of deep emotional connection to another person.
Tell me what you think about this, but I feel like I enjoy instruments whose tone or tonality or whatever is close to singing. And guitar is kind of close to it because you literally touch the strings and you can do whatever you want with it. If I play one note and I can bend or I can do other things. Flute or shakuhachi is even more advanced than that. It's really
Hmm.
close to singing, and I can feel what's like things flowing out of your body, and so I really enjoy, especially when you play like a big one, like
Hmm.
a really deep and resonant. I really enjoy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll have to do more. Well, now that I have these two new mics, I'm gonna try to do some more recording of longer flutes as well. And I agree. And actually, one of the instruments I really like is fretless guitar, fretless with nylon strings or something like this, and acoustic, because there is such a deep resonance. The frets are not taking away from the vibration of the neck, but in addition to that, you have the kind of the change of pitch fluctuation as well, that you don't have, everything's not fixed in tune. You can actually adjust and change, which makes it more like singing. And I think the out of tuneness of a violin, of a flute, and of shakuhachi especially, it's not out of tune in a way like the note is wrong, because if we play perfectly in tune with everything, that's actually not how we listen. Some notes have to be sharp and some notes have to be flat, but because we're able to do that, it makes it sound much more user friendly to the ear. Something about the note being a little bit flat actually makes us happier, and it makes us feel more from the music, because it's mimicking the voice, the natural tendencies of the voice and how our ears hear music.
I feel like music is really similar or close to how we speak, and that's why I mean, this book, Eigo Nodo. When I think about this topic, I think also about music a lot, and um, I with music, I really enjoy rich sound. Language also has a lot of rich and like really good sound, but linguists tend to focus on something that they can write about, or that they can convert things into symbols or signs, or this system of
Mm,
classification, such as like they say M is a bilabial. Yeah,
Mm,
but there's more to the sound of M than calling it a bilabial sound. But when Japanese people hear, okay, to pronounce M like a native speaker, okay, bilabial, okay, bilabial, two lips, and they practice like like a strengthen,
yeah.
put
Instead
power
of
to the yeah. But in reality, what we found in this book is that, or actually, Gina, my wife, found was that a sound of M has its own full life cycle. It goes like this. Right? The beginning, I hear
Yeah.
the beginning, I hear the climax, and then uh, release. So at least there are three parts. Actually, I'm just calling it three parts as a for the ease of talking about it, but it's actually a continuation.
Yeah.
But Japanese people, especially if they speak standard Japanese, they start from the closed position of the mouth, like ma.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So it's not ma, it's ma this
Right.
way.
And it's so interesting. Japanese people think L and R are the hardest thing for them. But actually, the sounds that we think that also exist in Japanese, such as M, is actually even harder because it's so different. The hardest one that I had difficulty teaching was the word mom. And my student from Tokyo says, mom, no, mom, mom. And, and the way to solve this one was like, tameki, sigh. You have to sigh right in front of each sound. Like instead of going ma, go ma,
Hmm.
ma, and then mom. And I bet it's something when you hear this same kind of conversation happens in your music kind of area
Yeah.
too, right?
And I because that's exactly where I was going to lead it next, and what I was going to say is a lot of times I'm trying to express the idea of onshoku or nedo and how to change that in a piece. And sometimes it can be really frustrating because as a teacher, well, okay, first off, as a shakuhachi player, a lot of times I don't know how I do things. I just do them. It's kind of like when you, as you're going through and you speak Japanese, and or if you say a certain phrase or you use a certain grammar point, you go, actually, I don't really know why I say that, and then you have to go and research about it. The same thing happens for musicians all the time. And I was recently asked how I do muraiki, and then so I was ended up able to make it a 5-minute video to showcase how I do it. But then I was thinking about what do I actually do, and what I thought I was doing was actually incorrect. Like I thought I was doing this, but in reality I was doing something completely different. So I had to do a lot of experimentation. And then when I'm trying to tell that to a student, they can't see the inner workings of my mouth. So and they can't feel what I'm feeling, so they actually have to do a lot of the same experimentation that I'm doing in order to create these sounds. So it's a very difficult thing. And I think what you're touching on is not just the word itself, but you're talking about the timbral contents of a note or of a word that make it easily understandable for the Western ear.
Yeah, so there's this disparity between how you think you're doing that becomes a way of teaching versus the reality. There may be some disparity, and we really have to be careful. And my wife was very good at kind of differentiating the two, ignoring the authentic or established way of teaching. And she focused on how she's speaking English as a native speaker of English. And I was asking her, why do you think you were able to figure this out, like this, or this Eigo Nodo concepts? She said that when she was taking dance lessons when she was growing up, she had to solve problems. A teacher would show you, okay, do this and do it like this. And she had to quickly learn by figuring out how to do this. And so she was like, for her, dance lessons were the kind of this, way of, how do you say, dance lessons helped her see things and figure things out of it. So it's really interesting. Linguists couldn't figure out how to help Japanese people to speak better English, but we did. And if we look back, it was because, something to do with her taking dance lessons and stuff.
Hmm. So I do want to say I have met some of your students when I was in Tokyo and Chiba. They came to my concert, so I thank you very much for sending them. But they, when they came up to me, they started speaking English, and their pronunciation was like by far better than most Japanese people who I know speak English. And it really felt natural, even the way that they took pauses when they said something like or um these sort of things that normally Japanese people would say this sort of expression was completely gone. And when they when they switched to English, they turned over to like an English speaking brain. So it's really fascinating, but the method really does work. And they speak, the gentleman that I met was actually very well spoken in English, used lots of very colorful language, and the pronunciation felt very confident. And so I think that the method is fantastic. Now, with that being said, when are we going to get the Japanese throat book, Nihongo Nodo?
This is what I always thought. Nihongo Nodo may not be necessary because you immediately notice when you start studying Japanese. I think it takes a while maybe, but it's not hard for you to realize that Japanese is choppy.
Yes,
Don't you think?
sure. Yes.
So you just tense and you produce choppy sounds. But still, I hear you. People still talk with some kind of American fluidity, I think. But you just have to become aware of this. Especially, I hear with unvoiced consonants, but I think you're doing it. People generally speaking are doing it to any sound. Like, what's a good example when American people speak Japanese? Any word. 何がありますかね ?wasabi ですか ?wasabi? Yeah, you're saying two S's. Wasabi.
Instead of wasabi.
Yeah, so you just become aware of that. And then I think you don't need a book maybe, but maybe I need to do a book.
I think a book would be very helpful because it's what, and also with that I want to parallel that one of my favorite videos, because you also have your own YouTube channel. One of my favorite video topics that you do is when you nitpick other people's Japanese. That's by far one of my favorite video series that you do. So I'd like to see more of that, because that's actually very helpful in learning as I continue to study Japanese and wanting to improve my pronunciation. That's one thing that actually really helps. I do think that the book would be, well, first off, I would buy it. Like without a doubt, I would be the person to pre-order it because I'm really interested in that. And I think the one thing that I get a lot when I go to Japan and when I start speaking to people, they'll of course they say things like, "Oh, Nihongo umai," or they'll say something like this, or they'll say, "Well, hatsuon kirei." And I mean, it's mostly my close male friends, but they like that sort of thing, and that's what's really impressive about my speaking is the fact that it's very, very easy to understand what I'm saying because my pronunciation is clear. And I think the more authentic and more Japanese pronunciation I can get, the more confident that I'm going to feel being on stage and talking to people. Because when I'm in America and I talk and I speak about at a concert, I can go in a little bit more depth and I can feel a little bit more comfortable because it's I'm confident with the language itself. Also, English it's easier to kind of drag things out and be really particular and specific. But in Japanese, it's a little bit more difficult. And also the fact that I could, I've slipped up before on stage and said, stupid things. Actually, one of this last time I went there, I was talking about Akita Obako, which is a type of Japanese folk song. And you might be already expect where this is going, but instead of saying obako, I said obaka. And so everybody laughs. And then I quickly, turn it into a joke and say, yeah, only stupid people would say that. And so to continue playing off the word. But, that happens every once in a while. And then, either sometimes people just look at me and they go, what? I don't know this word. I'm like, oh, I mean this. And they go, oh, okay.
A couple of years ago, I saw this video, and it's still popular. But this like a parody in which foreign people living in Japan they complain that when they, let's say, when they talk to a waitress in Japan, they're talking in Japanese, but waitress tries to respond in English, or they say, "Oh, I don't speak English," or something like that. Have you
Yeah.
seen this video?
Yeah, actually, I interviewed the guy who was in that video, David Neptune, and so his
Okay.
father's actually a really famous shakuhachi player. He grew up in Chiba, so yeah, that actually has happened to me multiple times too.
I have an opinion on that one. That the idea of why Japanese people respond or try to respond in English.
Mm,
That is, even though these so-called foreign people, I don't know, they're Japanese, they may be Japanese, but foreign-looking people, or they are speaking Japanese, but their voice sounds so gaijin, like you know,
mm.
sumimasen.
It's a
I'm not
sumimasen.
talking. I'm not talking about pronunciation, but it's like choppiness level, and this aura of gaijin-ness, like a charismatic. もしこんな感じで even with correct pronunciation, もしこんな感じで日本語喋ったら it sounds so like out of ordinary. And that's, I think, what Japanese people are responding. Oh my God, this guy, he's so charismatic. I have to respond in English or something like that.
Mm.
So if you try to sound choppy and humble, kind of, Japanese, uniquely Japanese, and then
Oh
facial
yeah.
expressions,
ああ、そうですね。申し訳ございません。お忙しいなので、ちょっと this sort of way, yeah,
yeah,
I,
yeah,
constantly pushing away from the actual thing you want to say. That would be actually a very good review video.
yeah.
I would really like you to, maybe review that video and kind of go through some of those things on what they're saying that actually makes Japanese people uncomfortable or makes them feel like, oh, I don't know how to respond to this because this is not a situation that I'm put in with regular everyday Japanese people who have a much different way of thinking about societal standards.
But also have to add that in Japan, we have different linguistic traditions, whatever. The stiffness is a trademark of people who speak standard Japanese, and dialects are very different. So I wanted to add dialects, speakers are more relaxed and maybe,
Mhm. So
easier.
can you give us an example? So let's have a very basic sentence. How about something like, "Hi, my name is Kaz, and I run a YouTube channel, and I'm the author of or co-author of Eigo Nodo" in
はい。
standard Japanese.
標準語では、なんか、タタタタタタタって感じですね。私の名前は、上川です。みたいな。広島だったら、in 広島、わわしね、上川言うんよ。like 言うんよ。It sounds like Chinese. と言い
Mm,
ます becomes, it's not really becomes, but,
mhm,
と言います、申します、言います。in 広島 we say 言うんよ。like,
mm,
何してますか what are you doing? 何しょん So, like this. So it's like
mm,
Chinese and also like English. 何しょ
mm,
んね is like, what are you doing? 何をしてますか is more standard.
mm. That's really,
So,
yeah.
yeah, no, just knowing that helps, I think.
So, can you say something like, let's say standard like it's extremely delicious,
とっても美味しい。
and then in your home dialect,
ぶちうま。
completely different,
ぶちう
and
ま。
and then in Hokkaido, it's namarume.
生、
Yeah, so
生、
it namarume.
生ルーメ。
Yeah.
うん
So, I mean, that's like it's what I actually find that's really interesting about the dialect is that it is much more connected and there isn't the choppiness. And I'd be interested to hear why that has changed over time, more like historically speaking. But, another one that I always have a question about and are I guess we can call him a mutual friend. Dolgen actually
は
made a
い。
video about the difference between z and z and like the two different how before they used to be completely different and now they are the same.
I heard about it and I used to be interested in that kind of topic. But this is a cynical view. Can I?
Yeah,
And I'm
I'm
not, this is
please.
not a slogan or anything, but those little tiny little things that sound interesting
Mhm.
helps students, how do you say, helps them be interested in the times, just that little traps. So
Mm.
some things I feel like sound interesting, but I'm like, so what? It
Uh,
doesn't really help me at all, kind of.
oh, I understand that.
So
Yeah.
it's discipline of knowledge usually have some little things so that students will buy into it with interest. And once you enter the field, it's not as interesting as it may sound, kind of stuff. Because I think in Japan, linguistics are used to educate female students in junior colleges, and parents have to pay tuition, and they have a lot of English literature departments, and you have to pay tuition before the class and stuff. I feel like it's a money industry,
Hmm.
and those tiny little interesting stories are ways to lure students into those departments.
So where can people learn more about you and where can people follow you?
What should I say? My YouTube channel, maybe Eigo Nodo.
Hmm. And there you have lots of things, lots of Japanese lessons, as well as the nitpicking videos, which I'm hoping for more. And then you also have a variety of content in general,
Yes, yes.
but all pertaining to Japanese language and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really looking forward to more videos, especially the nitpicking videos. They're my favorites. Um, and yeah, I hope for a Nihongo Nodo book as well.
ありがとうございます。
はい。
はい、どうも。